This is episode number 8 of Dev Branch, managing third-party plugins and your update. Brought to you by ServerPress, Maker's desktop server. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out at serverpress.com. And Cloudways web hosting. Cloudways handles all the hosting complexities so you can focus on building amazing WordPress websites without any hassle. Check them out at cloudways.com. Hey, how's it going, everyone? How are you doing?
Hey,
how are things?
You got a new sponsor.
Yep, we do. For the next couple weeks, we have a new sponsor. Yep.
That makes me feel great. Thanks, Cloudways. Thanks for supporting us. It doesn't mean anything to me other than I appreciate that you believe in us.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And it makes me feel less guilty for making Jason do all the work. But only a little bit less.
Yeah, I was gonna say no. Yeah,
Only a little bit.
So yeah,
I don't have those emotions.
Yeah.
In the intro, I messed up a little bit, but it is managing third-party plugins updates on your WordPress project. So we are talking about
your own.
Yeah. So what it is you have a project, you have a bunch of WordPress plugins that are installed on it, and you may or may not have made your own WordPress plugins, code changes on your within the theme, or plugins that you've made yourself, and you have an update that happens, and now you're going to have to deal with it. And it's either something that directly affects code that you wrote yourself, or you have two clashing plugins that don't like one another, and they don't know how to namespace properly, or they start breaking things. And that's kind of what we're looking at here is what do you do as a WordPress web developer dealing with somebody else's code that is being installed on your project?
This is such an old issue. Like, this is something that we've been talking about at various times on Watercooler. And my philosophy, over the last 8 years, and my philosophy has changed from the beginning to now, and ebbed and flowed in so many different ways on this issue. I just wanted to point that out. Like, this is an ongoing problem, and I think there's never. This is not a. This answer is for now and it holds forever type of situation, because I think a lot of this really depends on the infrastructure for updating plugins and on the plugin ecosystem and where the plugin sphere is at. Because there's been times when it's like chaos, and then there's been times when everyone plays by the rules. So I just want to say that for anyone who's watching this and it's not specifically today, all of this stuff is only applicable today. That's it. It's not relevant any other time.
If you're watching this in 2022, it could all be irrelevant.
Yeah, it's all wrong. But we're still funny. You should watch it anyway.
I agree. Download our old stuff and watch it.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Say, but I think there are some things that will always hold true, right? And one of the first things is if you're on a server, let's say your production server, and you click that update button, right, or add new, you are changing code, right? You're either adding code or you are changing code, right? And so it is important, and we say this all the time, but it is important to test those plugins somewhere other than your production server, even if you're just running an update, right? So you don't want to click that update or add new button on your production box, because it could bring down your site. That's the extreme. It's an extreme, but it could bring down your site.
It's a best practice, and I just had to. I warn clients, and it's like this weird space, because I'm like, well, so I'm just was dealing with a client who has a crappy server on SiteGround, and they don't have
I'm sorry, what was?
Nowhere.
You mumbled there for a second.
Nowhere. And they don't have an auto backup. They have to pay for a backup or upgrade. And in order to upgrade, they have to switch servers. So it's like this whole fiasco. But basically, I had to write a disclaimer to the client. And I'm like, so I'm going to make these changes. I had to make them pay for a backup, because I'm like, obviously, I'm not doing it with a backup. But there is no staging server. So I'd have to do a whole desktop server thing. And that's going to add a chunk of time. And they didn't want to pay for that time. So they didn't want to pay for the time for me to set up the staging situation. And so my disclaimer is like, yo, if this breaks, it's on you. It probably won't. It's probably not going to break, but there's a possibility that it could break. And in that case, it would take me X number of hours to, restore, fix things, blah, 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 blah. So this huge disclaimer, and then it makes it sound so bad for the client. Like I'm like, it's gonna break, but like that's
a good best practice that you just pointed out, right? So if you only have your one server, your production box, and you do need to make updates, a good best practice that you just pointed out is make a backup first, right? And you should at least,
or is that just like common sense? Like you are just not shooting yourself in the foot, like you know what I mean?
But you just said it. Some hosting doesn't come with backups, right? And so have a backup system. Make a backup first before you change any of your plugins, because you are changing code. Cosper wants to say something.
No, I was going to say if you're gonna take a backup, take a second backup. Not with the same.
No, see, this is the problem I get into, and then I have a backup of my backup, and that is why I can't use my phone anymore.
And you call it final. Call it final dash final.
Final backup 2.
Sorry, go ahead, Cosper, go.
Yeah. So say you do have a service that gives you backups. That's great. Take a backup there in your panel at your web host, whatever. I am always concerned about my primary backup failing. I've had it happen.
I mean, it's
So instead of running into that situation, if you have the ability and the time to take a second backup, it's always a good idea to have a second backup that isn't part of your same backup system. So in case one of those systems fails, at least you have a way to recover your site.
Yeah.
The problem is that best practice and what clients want to pay for, and so many times are clashy and conflicting.
So let's talk about what's happening here, right? Why this stuff happens, right? And I said again, I know I sound like a broken record, but the kids these days they don't know what records are, so I sound like I'm repeating myself, right?
No, you sound like you're on a boomerang.
Not all plugin developers are created equally. So some plugins.
Wait, what?
Yes, I know. Some plugins you can sort of assume are safe, right? I know what those plugins are. So usually, not always, but usually premium plugins and some of the more common names that are out there are typically safe. That's not always the case. But if you're just downloading a plugin off, if you're just downloading a plugin off of WordPress.org, or worse, off of another site that's not an official WordPress site, right? I wasn't naming names. I wasn't. Are you a ventriloquist all of a sudden?
I think it was Cosper. Cosper said something.
So a lot of those plugins are developed by a couple of people, one person, right? And they don't update as often, right? That can happen. And not this isn't necessarily done maliciously, but things can just break because they get outdated. Or somebody could upload a plugin with a bug in it, right? It happens. Right?
A plugin with a bug-in.
I know. Not all plugins are created equally.
Plugin with a bug-in. Why have we never used that phrase before?
That's where you need to be careful, because the reason these are called third-party plugins is they're being created by many third parties. Thousands and thousands of third parties that are out there creating plugins.
I mean, and I think it's safe to say, but the reason the bigger ones are better generally is because they have an infrastructure for supporting problems and fixing problems. Right. B, they have people who are meant to pay attention to the updates of core and what's happening there. And C, they have an inherent financial interest in making sure that they don't lose their customers. And so the free and the smaller plugin shops who are doing it on the side or for a project they had, that incentive is not always there. And if you can't, like, the amount you want to, incentivize them with let me buy you a coffee, that doesn't work. That does not usually incentivize one-shop people.
And so let's expand on your point B, because I think it's important, right? Is plugin developers keeping their plugin updated for newer versions of Core that are coming out, right? And so
Right.
Core has a cycle where they release betas before the master version comes out, and it happens fast, right? And so the better plugin developers that are out there are actually testing their plugin against the beta version so that their plugin is ready when new versions of WordPress come out. That what I'm describing is not the norm. That's not what most plugins do, right?
Yeah,
most
they're more
plugins
reactive than proactive.
That's correct. Thank you. So yeah, most plugins are not following those best practices, and so that's where things break, because there could be a gap between when the core version of WordPress comes out and when the plugin gets updated, and that's where you're in danger.
So many managed hosts, which hopefully all of your clients are on, and everyone's on a managed host. But the problem, it's not really a problem, but an issue that is created by managed hosts is that they're going to keep your core code updated. And they may or may not, depending on the settings you have and the configuration you have, be updating your plugins along with it. So if you're not paying attention, right, you can have, or if you're not actively managing a site for a client and their code is just, they're not updating their plugins and their core code is just getting updated automatically, then you have the out of sync thing happen, and you can just start having plugins break, and that can panic clients, especially if they throw up admin notices with big red fonts and stuff.
So Cosper, plug your ears for a second, because he's probably going to hate this comment. The first thing I would recommend there is keep those core WordPress updates on. Turn off the auto plugin updates. Turn it off. Don't let the host manage those updates for you.
Unless you have
a developer.
Unless you have a host that actually, and some managed WordPress hosts do this, where they will take snapshots of your site to basically make sure that nothing is in the plugin upgrades is hosing. I've still seen problems because it's not all just a visual comparison sort of thing that needs to happen when you upgrade a plugin. Sometimes there's functionality that just doesn't get shown on the front page of your site where a lot of these tools check. However, I understand, but the problem is when you turn those off, you have to set a day, preferably a day out of the week, where you go through and run your upgrades, because you can't just
we do it once a week.
Yeah, no, I'm just laughing because your clients will pay for that, and my clients are cheap. That's not actually true.
Hopefully not even clients are. They're cost conscious.
We're not recording this on the internet.
They're cost conscious.
They don't have unlimited budgets. They don't have the money flowing the way Steve's clients do. But the real problem is that it feels like a lot of the time, I think, to clients who are willing to pay, but they're willing to pay for things that they can perceive value in. And I don't think that a lot of clients can perceive value in a weekly plugin update. They'd be like, "Hey, just do that monthly."
Do they perceive value in uptime?
Yeah, I mean, I just think
because they don't. It's invisible. They don't know it until they're in downtime.
Stuff. We're back in this world of having to demonstrate, just like with the page speed thing, where you're having to demonstrate to your client why they shouldn't have a hero page when everyone has hero pages everywhere. It's like I spend so much of my time. I feel like I'm annoying to my clients because I'm always explaining to them how, we need to do this because of this and whatever. And I wonder how, if other site people are just doing it and not explaining it to their clients, or what it is. I don't know.
Depends.
Where everyone's just very confused. And this is why everyone thinks their sites are very magical and happen.
But this is why we have this show to explain these things, right? You can't just throw up a WordPress site and not maintain it. It has to be maintained.
I mean,
everything has to be maintained. What doesn't have to be maintained? What is there a thing in the world that does not require maintenance?
My looks.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, look at the tape. We've got 8 years of tape to prove it.
a lot of people just throw up a WordPress site and don't maintain it, and
Yep.
that's
I know.
that's part of the problem. That's part of the reason that we have botnets of WordPress sites. WordPress is. I saw a number earlier this week that said, just based on the current growth, we'll hit 50% of the web by 2025. And I'm sure
2025, that is so far away.
No, it's not.
No.
I'm so tired of this goal. It's like the boringest goal in the world. Like, how long is this goal? Like, that is like 4 years away.
But by that time, WordPress botnet will be like 30% of the internet. So because there are a bunch of people who are just throwing up sites. But hey, you know what, you guys? This is Dev Branch. I want to kind of get into a little bit of a nerdy tool here.
Yes.
I shared in the chat. I shared in the chat, Jason, if you want to pull it up. A little tool called Codeception.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a PHP-based tool. You already know PHP if you're doing WordPress development, so you should be comfortable there. But even if you don't know PHP, the syntax for Codeception is ridiculously easy. I know like non-developers who can do these tests. If you had the font size down a little smaller, there's an example in the little side thing.
This front thing, I am on page. I click enter. I see it works. Like that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's so great, and I know several people who use it, and they actually have WordPress integrations as well. But you can create tests and basically say, like Say said, I am on page, and then whatever the URL of the page is. I click enter, a link that says enter. I see it works, and it works as an H1. And so you can actually set, like, here's what the header looks like. Here's what the appropriate things look like. The cool thing about this is you can actually do this as well for backend stuff on your site. So you can actually do codeception tests for how you expect things to work in WP admin. So if you really want to get into it, like it will do these tests for you. And you can write tests very simply. It's one of those, like, I know that it's December. There's probably going to be that little gray space between Christmas and New Year's. I don't know about most of you.
I call it dead week.
Yeah, I take that week off work. And I mean, if I was looking for a project, if I didn't already know Codeception, it'd be the perfect time to learn, if you're a developer, to learn how to make Codeception tests.
I would just like to point out a little bit about your boundaries. You're like, I take it off work, and then I would learn Codeception because that's so much fun. I'm like, yay!
No.
And I'm like, part of the problem.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Hashtag take a vacation.
I mean, I would also spend a lot of time watching Netflix.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I wanted a little honesty in my dead week plans.
So since this is Dev Branch, let's talk about where I was going with that initial conversation, right? So because of the way things are, and when you update code or update a plugin, you are actually adding code. Our practice at Zeek, I'm not going to necessarily call this a best practice, but what we do for all of our client sites is we actually disable all that stuff. So we disable the ability to add a new plugin. We disable plugin updates. You can see plugins, but you cannot manage plugins from the dashboard. And there's a simple line of code, and I'm going to look for it. I don't have it handy, but there is a line of code that I think you can add to your WP config file that just shuts off themes, adding themes and plugins and updating plugins. It's a very simple line of code. I just don't have it handy. And so
that has
we turn
to be
all
done,
that
though,
off.
if you have you have to be actively managing a client site, right? Like you can't just like give them a site that you're not on a retainer contract or something with and be like, bye-bye, enjoy your updated plugins.
Yeah, you don't want the late night phone call.
And really what we don't want is we don't want code to change that's outside of our control or knowledge, because it can crash the site. And these are mission critical sites that we're building. So we purposely turn that stuff off, really, so nobody can go in and make a mistake. People might just go in and click something they just don't, because they don't know what they're doing. And we don't want that to happen, including me. I've done it. So this is really a Steve protection is what this is.
And that one of those sites that I inherited from terrible OC dev that I've talked about a bunch of times, they have had on the site a plugin called Bulk Edit, active and available for pretty much anyone to use. And if you accidentally click that in the sidebar, it's like, delete all things inside. Delete every post and page inside WordPress. Like that power, what you would have to manually go and do. They installed the plugin and left it on there in the production for anyone. It wasn't protected at all. And they could just go in and bulk delete literally everything. I'm like, wow, you made that real easy to screw that up. Again, professional development firm in Orange County.
There's a lot of plugins. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. There's a lot of plugins that we actually, when we inherit sites, we strip out. Any plugins that are giving you access to the database or access to the code or allowing you to edit something within the server, we just remove all those. Anyway, the next place I was going is so the way we manage plugins and plugin updates is we do everything through a system called Composer. Right, and so all of our plugins actually don't even live in the code repository, right? They're all a line of Composer. So as we're deploying code to the site, Composer takes care of pulling the plugins from their homes essentially and rebuilding them and putting them on the site. So we do that, and we get them out of the code repository altogether, so we don't have the ability to edit the core code of the plugin, right? So core WordPress code, core plugin code is not part of our repositories. It's all done in Composer so that we can't edit that core code, right? So core code we know is always clean and pure and not touched. So Composer is a handy tool, and the continuous integration platform we use is called BuddyWorks, right? So it's buddy.works.
Why is everything named Buddy? Why?
Yeah, so BuddyWorks is, and again, I know this is the dev branch. This is very advanced, but BuddyWorks is amazing. It's awesome. So it's a tool chaining system. Not only does it do our code deployments, but there are tools that we run during each deployment, and one of them is a PHP syntax checker. And so it actually goes through all the PHP syntax, and if it finds a bug, it'll stop the deployment. It will not deploy a bug.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's nice.
It's really cool. Again,
like,
it's so that
it's
exactly what it is. It's like, you know what? You forgot this semicolon over here.
It's like, does it have the voice of the boss in the office? It's like, yeah. So I'm gonna need you to fix this bug.
We're gonna need you to go ahead and come in on Saturday as well.
So that update, it's not gonna go through. So could you,
Steve, what about
try a little harder?
What about the plugins that are in that you've set up using Composer that you're going to be bringing in those third-party plugins? Are you kind of locking those out so they're not being updated, and you're only going to update them when you've already tested everything?
Yes. So Composer's a little weird, right? So the way Composer's works is there's two levels of Composer that we're using, right? So all of the plugins that are in the plugin repo on WordPress are available at a site called WPackagist.
We've mentioned that in some episode at some point before, because I remember laughing at it.
Yeah, so WPackagist, and you can laugh again. WPackagist is the Composer version of all of the plugins, all the publicly available plugins, right? Premium plugins are not available in here. So we also use a system called Packagist, which is our own private repo, our own private Packagist that's like this, where we put our own plugins that we've written that we use over and over again, and where we store the premium plugins that we've bought so that we can distribute them to our projects.
Why don't you call that Z Packagist?
Because I didn't I didn't make it. It's a service that we're buying called Packagist.
No, W Packagist, but you said you make your own, also called Packagist.
Right. It's actually called Private Packagist is what it's called. It's actually
that's funny too.
It's it's private package.
Okay, it works.
It's packagist.com is what it is.
So when
that's
you,
your
when
own,
you
you're like, screw your W. I'm taking your name. Okay.
When you want to deploy, you grab your package, right?
Yes.
And, okay.
Your private package.
Your private package.
And your public package.
Sure.
You put them together. And
anyway,
you launch.
What's great about this? What's great about this is none of the code is accessible for us to edit at all, right? So we can't make a mistake even if we wanted to.
That's brilliant, actually, because
have you ever wanted to?
No, I haven't wanted to, but I have made these mistakes. So
you've never been tempted. You're like, I could just put a semicolon right here, and your whole site will go down. So send the check. Don't charge her.
No, that's not how. No, that might be how that other OC agency operates, but not us.
No.
So
you're fine.
One thing I want to get to before the episode ends, with WooCommerce specifically, they do this thing with their plugins. If you can scroll up just a tiny bit, Jason, in the plugin headers, they add this handy 2 lines. Scroll down. WC requires at least, and it gives you a minimum version of WooCommerce, and then WC tested up to, which is the maximum version of WooCommerce. I wish that we had this in WordPress core. Like, I wish we actually had something in WordPress core that says this plugin requires at least WordPress, let's say 5. And, tested up to 5.6. Like, so that way, where this plugin can be safely deployed. And also, if you're one of those weirdo edge cases, I'm sorry to all the weirdo edge cases out there still
Don't
running.
apologize to them.
I know. Upgrade your shit. Seriously. Please. But, yeah, for all the weirdo edge cases, they'll know that they have to upgrade. It's like, okay, I need to upgrade this plugin. I need to I wish that WordPress had that, because it would be a good thing to have.
Weird that WooCommerce
but it would also be
sharing its code.
It would also be great if it would also be great if those lines actually meant something to the core system, right? If it actually didn't let you upgrade because you didn't have the right required stuff. There are some plugins there's some premium plugins I bought that actually have those dependencies. They won't let you activate unless you have the right thing.
Lately. I've seen a lot of those lately, especially for PHP.
That's great.
Because there's a lot of I think it's just in the repository, like the plugin. It's not the plugin. It's just the plugin. It's like, this won't work with your system setup. So I'm pretty sure that there is some control in the just basic repository. I mean, not that I've just been installing plugins on production sites from the repository.
I mean, it could be because of this.
Yes.
New version of PHP just got released.
This is imminent. It's imminent.
Party. I just upgraded a client site from to PHP 7. So hey, good. It wasn't.
You're only
I
about
wasn't
3 years
managing it
behind.
before. I wasn't behind. Their site was behind. There's a difference. Sometimes you have to bring people along slowly. You can't convert everything at once. It's like you buy a new house and you can't some people can do all the renovations at once, but some people are like, first we got to do the bathroom and then we'll work on the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like, there is sometimes you have to figure that stuff out.
No,
you are literally describing what I'm dealing with right now. So
that is why I use that analogy. I just want you're like, first we have to upgrade the electrical grid, and then we can put new washing machines in. Like, that is how that works. Like, you can't. And I know that just because we're on Dev Branch and being geeky doesn't mean we should also pretend that all of the agencies out there and all of the devs out there and all of their clients out there are operating at the same fancy pants level that Zeke is. Let's be real about that.
Let's just pretend. Let's pretend.
Let's pretend like that. It's a nice world and everyone's contracts are like super good. And yeah, next year maybe. But I think that there has to be some good ground, some safe ground between the cowboy coding and the workflow that involves like 4 separate systems and, you know, stripping out all of that stuff, right? Like the whole point of WordPress is that you're supposed to be able to click a button, but we're over here saying, don't just click the buttons. So that's like me saying, don't use the media library.
Just because you can.
Oh no!
Look at the time.
We have so much more to talk about. Damn,
folks! I want to say thank you very much for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for all the folks that were in the chat
or you're
helping us
going
out and asking us questions in there.
He's not going to.
Thank you very much.
We love you.
I'll talk to y'all later. Bye bye.
Outro.